everyone. My name is Anjali Thakur, and my senior presentation is on the impacts of 9/11 on Muslim communities in the United States. I would first like to thank my sponsor, Professor Kay Sanders, for guiding me throughout this process. September 11, 2001, the day where the world stood still and fell silent as terrorists on suicide missions crashed hijacked planes into the World Trade Center towers, the Pentagon, and a field in Pennsylvania. American Airlines Flight 11 hit the 80th floor of the North Tower at 8:45 a.m., immediately killing hundreds of civilians and trapping people on higher floors. Many believed that this crash was an accident until another airplane crashed the South Tower just a couple minutes later. New York City was submerged in dust, ashes, smoke, and burning debris of the buildings. At 9:45 a.m., the third plane flew straight into the military headquarters in the Pentagon. The last airplane crashed into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania at 10:03 a.m. as three passengers attempted to regain control of the plane after hearing about the other crashes. Since then, on September 11th of every year, the nation comes together to commemorate all 3,000 civilians who died in the terrorist attacks. The consequences of 9/11 continue to persist through racism and mental and physical health disorders. Let's talk about the discrimination many communities faced after the 9/11 attacks. Many non-Arabic communities felt obligated to display acts of patriotism after 9/11. For some, it meant decorating their front lawns with flags, but for others, it meant resorting to violence, promoting discrimination, or spewing racial slurs against the Muslim community and perceived Muslims, such as South Asians, Sikhs, Hindus, and Arab Americans. This violence stems from Islamophobia, which is a strong fear or dislike of Muslims or Islam. Islamophobia leads to racial profiling and hate crimes against Muslims or perceived Muslim communities, which increased following 9/11 and further progressed since 2016 when the Trump administration took office. 645 hate crimes throughout the nation were reported to media organizations in the first week. After 9/11, many Sikhs were perceived to be Muslims and labeled as terrorists. In 2011, 64% of Sikhs stated that they were afraid for their safety because of the increase in hate crimes and discrimination. After Donald Trump became president in 2016, 60% of religious Muslim Americans have been discriminated against, which is higher than other religious groups. Southern Poverty Law Center claimed anti-Muslim hate crimes increased by 197% in 2016. In addition, one-third of Muslims are discriminated against either by being excluded or ignored in healthcare settings. President Trump supported policies that enabled ethnic profiling, such as the Patriot Act, the National Security Entry, and the RAISE Act. These policies, put into place to specifically target Arabs, South Asians, and Muslims, failed to accomplish their real purpose, which was to prevent terrorism. NSEERS implemented a policy where citizens from 26 Middle Eastern countries had to undergo an extra inspection upon arrival and an extra registration for departure from the United States. Throughout my research, I came across many articles written by victims who suffered discrimination post 9/11. However, the story of Adama Ba spoke volumes about the racial injustices many have to face due to racial profiling. Adama Ba was a 17-year-old girl who was arrested for overstaying her visa. She was transferred to a juvenile detention center without her parents' permission. She was strip searched thrice a day, and officers spewed racial slurs at her, and if she decided to talk back, she was put into solitary confinement. She was released after 6.5 weeks with an ankle bracelet that she had to wear for 3 years. After her release, she was found out that her dad had been deported, and she had to drop out of school to work 3 to 4 jobs so she could support her family. The level of discrimination she had to endure was torturous. This story provided crucial insight into the harsh realities of what some of these communities have undergone. Now, these acts of discrimination do affect physical and mental health drastically. Ethnic profiling, interrogation, and racism cause high levels of stress amongst the Muslim and perceived Muslim communities. A study found that 600 adult Arab Americans across 35 states suffered from anxiety and depression. Arab Americans have a higher rate of depression and anxiety than the general population and other minority groups. 61% of Muslims born in the United States and 39% of Muslims who immigrated to the US experienced at least one of these incidents: singled out by law enforcement, physically attacked or threatened, called offensive names, singled out by airport security, or someone acted suspiciously around them. Research has displayed a positive relationship between discrimination and depression, anxiety, PTSD, suicidal thoughts, and psychological distress. In fact, discrimination is correlated with double the risk of having two disorders and triple the risk of having more than three disorders. Physical health can be negatively impacted by this type of stress, such as elevating blood pressure and weakening the immune system. Discrimination is also affiliated with higher rates of alcohol use, smoking, drug use, and unhealthy eating habits. Many children have also suffered from the traumatic experience as well. 35% of American parents from a national sample reported that their child was displaying at least one of the five stress symptoms. 6 weeks later, 60% of parents in New York City proclaimed that their child showed moderate PTSD. Trauma can be transmitted from parents to their children, even if their child didn't go through the traumatic experience themselves. Parents with insufficient or low coping abilities influence children to be in higher distress. In addition, children with direct exposure to terrorist attacks are more likely to have a physical health condition for a lifetime. Evidence from another study confirmed that parents with high levels of ethnic biases and prejudices were more likely to have children that displayed the same explicit and implicit biases. A study found that 42% of Muslim children were bullied in school because of their faith. High levels of depression, anxiety, and PTSD were found in children if they were harassed at a younger age. Some signs of trauma in infants and toddlers include increased irritability, crying, fear of being alone, and sleep disturbances. For ages 5 and younger, separation anxiety, facial expressions of whimpering, trembling, fear, and crying. Kids in elementary school faced withdrawal, had disruptive behavior, difficulty in paying attention, and adolescents suffered from depression, having flashbacks and nightmares. Many did receive treatment for PTSD. Project Liberty involved 100 various mental health agencies that delivered free crisis counseling and public education. Psychological first aid was designed to decrease distress, help survivors contact additional services, and continue short and long-term adaptive functioning. The five-step approach helped people feel safe, calm, increase self and community efficacy, connectedness, and instilled hope. There is a direct positive correlation between spirituality and religiosity and physical and mental health. Positive religious coping methods proved to improve post-traumatic growth, and those who had a strong identification with religion had a higher psychological health and less distress. Institutional religion actually causes more distress and is linked to depression and anxiety, but personal devotion, which includes intrinsic religion, causes less distress. The best way for children to cope with trauma is through active coping engaging, which includes engaging in the efforts of dealing with stress using problem solving and positive reappraisal, and practice positive thinking to lower their levels of anxiety. So, what can we do to decrease discrimination and improve these communities' mental and physical health? Eliminating the policies put into place that enable ethnic profiling and discrimination, such as the Patriot Act, the National Security Entry, and the RAISE Act, would be a start. Not only have these policies not stopped terrorism from occurring, but these policies have proven to be detrimental to these communities and have been in place for way too long. The creation of new policies to severely punish perpetrators of hate crimes and other racial incidents would help establish a sense of security and comfort within the Muslim and perceived Muslim communities. In addition, teaching diversity and inclusion at a young age would further prevent prejudices from stemming. Workplaces should also adopt such diversity and inclusion programs to educate their employees, thereby ensuring parity in society. At a more personal level, it is crucial for each and every individual to work on becoming more aware of their own prejudices and stereotypes and actively disintegrate them. In conclusion, discrimination and 9/11 caused an increase of various mental health disorders. Children also displayed symptoms of PTSD, anxiety, agoraphobia, or separation anxiety. Some coping mechanisms used were the psychological first aid treatment, religiosity and spirituality, positive thinking, and active coping mechanisms. We need to eliminate outdated policies, create new policies, and increase diversity and inclusion in workplaces. Thank you so much for your time.